Out with a salute to the flag, please, in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carrie?
Mr. Talty?
I'm here.
Mr. Conti?
Here.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Here.
Mr. Panucci?
Here.
Ms. Suter?
Here.
Mr. Reed? Ms. Cantilla?
Here. Mr. Edwards?
The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Brick Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be posted on the Administration Office Bulletin Board, the official district website, and Channel BTV 20, and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Brick Times, the Star Ledger, and a municipal clerk's office.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Panucci.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Cusinelli. Mr. Edwards,
Who's doing
you have to read the notice.
Whereas the Brick Township Board of Education has been performed pursuant to the applicable New Jersey statutes, and whereas the board is charged with the responsibility of performing all acts and doing all things consistent with the laws and rules of the State Board of Education, necessary for the lawful and proper conduct, equipment, and maintenance of the public schools and public school property of the Brick Township School District, and whereas Section 7 of the Open Public Meeting Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting of the board in certain circumstances, and whereas the board has determined that circumstances exist for such an executive session, and whereas the board has found the action described below to be necessary and proper, now therefore be resolved by the board on November 20th, 2014, that the board shall be, that the public shall be excluded from the discussion of an action on the executive session herein set forth. The session will be approximately 1 hour and a half, 90 minutes, and the general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is student and personnel matters. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter will be made public if and when it is deemed to be in the public interest to do so, and the need for confidentiality is no longer required by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Do I have a vote from... Well, I got the motion in the second. I need to just have a vote.
Mr. Talty?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Suter?
Yes.
Ms. Cantilla?
Yes.
I'm having trouble trying to upload it. And then Jack will do the resolution at the end. Yeah. No action will be taken.
I'm sorry for the delay, everyone. We're having some technical difficulties, but I would like a motion to come back into public session.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Panucci.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conti.
Mr. Talty?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Suter?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Cantillo?
Yes. Moving on to our presentations. Sean from Brick Memorial High School.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. For any new faces in the room, I'm Sean Millay, Brick Memorial's SGA president and representative. Just last Friday, we had the special ed dance. Mr. Panucci, saw you there. The students got to dance, have dessert and dinner, and ultimately just have a lot of fun. All the clubs had chaperones come and dance with the students. I had the privilege of meeting a young student named Daniel, who was a very good dancer. Mr. Blessing actually challenged him to a dance-off, but he declined. He then came up to me at lunch the next day and told me he's going to be doing the talent show, so I'm looking forward to that. Last week, Key Club held a academic bowl. It's a Jeopardy-style trivia game for all the clubs to participate in. It was after school on Thursday, and there was just many rounds of fun and intelligence, I guess you could say. SGA came in second place for that. Pals Club Makeup Drive racked up a total of more than 1,000 donations of makeup for breast cancer survivors. And this month, they're having a charity event for Thanksgiving, where they create boxes, decorate them, and put in food for any needy families that can't afford food for the holidays. Next month, they will also be hosting a toy drive for families that cannot afford toys for Christmas. Along with this, SGA will also be hosting a toy drive, and anyone who wishes to donate can do so. We'll gladly take any donations. December 18th, we'll be holding an ugly sweater party. We had one last year. It was a big success. We're hoping for the same turnout this year. Prizes will be awarded to anybody with the best ugly sweater. I actually have Santa holding a beer. Last year, people just had like really ugly ones though, so I don't think I'll win. Yesterday, the class of 2015 had the Powder Puff football game. It's the junior girls play the senior girls in a game of football, and some of the boys actually dress up like cheerleaders and cheer for them. The seniors won, and 200 people showed up to watch for $3 a ticket. And then now with that intro to sports, I'm going to talk about the fall season that just was wrapped up. Gymnastics finished 10th in the state and 6th in the shore with a 12-2 record. The girls' soccer team advanced to the semifinals of the Central Jersey Group 4 with a 15-6-1 record. Boys soccer finished 13-6-2 and qualified for both the state and shore conference tournaments. Football finished the regular season with a 6-3 record. Boys cross country, Kyle Muller placed 8th in Central Jersey Group 4 race and will run in the Meet of Champions this Saturday. Volleyball finished their finest school season in history, competing in both the conference and state playoffs. Girls cross country finished the regular season with a 4-3 record and placed fourth in Ocean County. They've placed 13th in the shore and placed 11th in Central Jersey Group 4. Field hockey finished the season by competing in both state and shore conference playoffs for the first time in 20 years. And then our own Hannah Kowalski signed a letter of intent to Pace University, I believe, a few days ago. And Mike Rakulia of the BMHS soccer program was honored by the Shore chapter of the Soccer Association on Wednesday night. He received the prestigious Rusty Rizzatello Scholarship Athlete Sportsmanship Award. He was one of only 2 boys in the Shore to receive this honor. Here's to a good winter season as well. Being as we are in a decent amount of the school year, I just wanted to comment on how great the new administration is. I had the privilege of talking with Mr. O'Cone countless times. I just want to say how great it is he's back in our school. Ms. Joseph is wonderful. I get to talk to her all the time, and it's just really a great group of people. As always, thank you for having me up here to talk. I love doing it, and see you next month.
Thank you, Sean, and we love having you. A couple of presentations. Just going to turn this around a little bit, Mr. Conti. We don't want to block you. Very nice-looking man. We don't want you to not be seen. Okay. First, I'd like to call up Kathy Durante from Ocean First Bank for presentation.
Thank you for having me here this evening. I have had the privilege of serving at Ocean First for more than 11 years in the role of the executive director of the foundation. For those of you that might not be familiar with the work that we do, we were founded by Ocean First Bank back in 1996 when the bank went public. And we have the distinguished honor of being the first bank in the nation to create a private foundation during its IPO conversion. And that's something that we're incredibly proud of because since that time, many banks have followed our leadership example, and subsequent foundations have invested more than $613 million. So we're proud to have said that we're the first. Here this evening to recognize a great group of teachers in the administration with a special award Earlier this year, back in October, we held our annual ceremony for our model classroom grant recipients. And as in the past, Brick Township School District had a number of schools that applied. And for the second year running through the Model Classroom Grant Program, you did have a school that was selected, Osborneville Elementary School. It's very competitive. We have more than 75 schools that compete for these grants every year. We offered a total of $150,000 in grants, and we selected 5 schools at the elementary, 5 at the middle, and 5 at the high school. So it's a great distinction for Osborneville that they were selected for this particular award. Our commitment to education doesn't end with the Model Classroom Grant Program. There's a couple other things I'd like to mention just in case you have the opportunity to share the word. Last year, we surpassed, in just 5 years, $1 million in scholarship giving to local graduating high school seniors, and that's just students within our footprint of Ocean and Monmouth County. That's a strong tradition that we, like I said, just established a few years ago, but that's something that we hope to continue into the future. So if you do know any graduating high school seniors, and I'm sure you all do, that are looking for a scholarship, we partner with Brookdale Community College, Ocean County College, Monmouth University, and Georgian Court to offer scholarships that range from $1,000 to $2,500 for their freshman year to help get them started in their collegiate career. And one of the other things that we're incredibly proud to do every year is to provide sponsorship to the Ocean County Teacher of the Year, and we just have been in conversation with the past few days with the superintendent that's taking over that special recognition program that will honor teachers throughout Ocean County. So that's something else that we love doing every year. I'd like to just congratulate Mrs. LaRusso. I know was instrumental in helping to write the grant for this school, but also the principal, Kathy DiGregoli, and her entire team that came together to create the Model Classroom Grant proposal. And it gives me great pleasure to present them and you with a check for $10,000 tonight to create that classroom.
Pat LaRusso, could you come down too, please?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Step right up here and
Congratulations.
present that to them.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Next presentation is our BASF Science Education Grant. And I would like to call up, well, first I'm going to read to you. The grant was to enhance school science education programs to help students gain a greater understanding and appreciation of the role that science plays in everyday life. The Outstanding Achievement Award goes to Vets Memorial Middle School, Mrs. Castellanos, our principal. If you could come up, it's a $5,000 grant. And our teacher, Sarah Dunn, both. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
These are some very special recognitions also. This is the 2014 Exemplary Education, Elementary Education Recognition. The New Jersey Department of Education, through the Division of Teacher and Leader Effectiveness, established the 2014 Exemplary Elementary Education Recognition Program. Exemplary educators who are chosen must demonstrate exceptional teaching, leadership abilities, strong knowledge and skills, an inspiring presence, and a clear vision for quality teaching and learning. These candidates also have a positive impact on our students, colleagues, and school community. We are very privileged to be one of the few districts to have candidates selected by the New Jersey Department of Education. I would like to first, Patricia Krebs, Drum Point Elementary School. And the other, Tracy Schroesbeyer. From the Warren Wolf Elementary School. I'm sorry. Congratulations.
Good job. I'll have to slap it.
Moving on to our approval of minutes, we have October 9th, special meeting, October 23rd, executive session, and October 23rd, regular meeting. I need a motion and a second.
A motion.
Thank you, Mr. Panucci.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Cusinelli. Do I have any questions from board members on these minutes? No. Seeing none. Mrs. Carey?
Mr. Folty?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes to 1, abstain on 2 and 3, please.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Tudor?
I abstain on October 9th and yes to October 23rd.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Cantillo?
Yes. I would like to just ask, trying to conserve our time here, because we are going to go into executive session again after the meeting. Do I have any board members that have anything in their committee reports that they find that they would really like to discuss tonight, or can we suspend them? If anybody has anything that they really would like to report out, I don't want to stop anyone, but I would like to move the meeting along a little bit. No one? Okay. Dr. Uzinski, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to acknowledge our high schools. I received from the ETS this week a congratulatory letter that just states that our high schools, once again, because of the number of AP tests taken that achieve a 3+ score, out of 625 districts in the state of New Jersey, only 35 get put into the honor roll, and both Brick High School and Brick Memorial were honored into the honor roll from the ETES. So congratulations again. And with that being said, the accolades that come along and the grants that we receive, none other than because of the excellence that we have in teaching, our custodial staff and so forth. It takes the entire team. The month of October was a month for honoring our administrators. That's our principals and our assistant principals. And I did send out, and I would like to share with the entire community, a proclamation that I put together that I sent to our administrators commending Brick Township Public Schools principals and assistant principals. The key to student success is a great school, and the key to a great school is a great principal. Whereas principals and assistant principals are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, disciplinarians, community builders, public relations experts, budget analysts, facility managers, special program administrators, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives, as well as being entrusted with young people, the most valuable resource. And whereas principals set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers to develop and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements, and set performance goals and objectives. And whereas the vision, dedication, and determinations of a principal provides the mobilization force behind any school reform effort. And whereas leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at school according to research conducted by Wallace Foundations. And whereas the celebration of National Principals Month We honored our elementary, middle, and high school principals and recognized the importance of school leadership in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now, therefore, on behalf of the superintendent, I commend the dedication and effort of our Brick Township Public Schools District principals and assistant principals during the National Principals Month, and I'm sure our Board of Education concurs with me. Congratulations, and thank you for all that you do. Madam President, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Kuzinski. Moving on to curriculum and instruction, Dr. Morgan.
Thank you, Ms. Cantillo. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the following items, numbers 1 through 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. I would like to, just before we move on to these items, on item number 6, has been a very, very difficult policy to have accepted and to implement with technology changing as quickly as it is. We have worked very, very hard on this policy, and I just would like everyone to understand that it is a work in progress. We are continuing to collaborate about it, and we need to have something approved tonight to be in compliance. We have, our QSAC is an ongoing process right now, and this is the second reading of the policy. It will be adopted, but there is still work to be done on it, and we are still working on it. So having said that, I need a motion and a second for items number 1 through 7.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mrs. Suter, and thank you, Mr. Talpe. Do I have any questions from board members on items 1 through 7? Mrs. Cusinelli?
Yes. Could you just explain to me a little bit about number 4? When I opened the attachment, it was dated 2011. What exactly is the ratification in that?
Mr. Edwards, do you want to? It's on the memorandum with the police department.
If I may, Madam President, if I could, this is a uniform statewide policy and procedures, obviously, to ensure cooperation and consistency between the law enforcement and, obviously, the educational officials. In terms of the revisions, we would have to get back to you, but this is a standard
I know that we do it every year, and it is required, Mrs. Cusinelli, and it is a document that is probably this thick.
Okay. I was just confused because it also was marked 2011, and there wasn't any note about maybe is it just that it's renewing it?
Yes. May I? That's renewed each and every year. What happens in the summertime is we receive it from the county office. I get in touch with the chief of police. The chief of police, myself, the board president, and the county office has to sign off on it. It's a memorandum of agreement that comes each and every year, but we review it. I review with the chief of police. We didn't make any major changes in there. If any recommendations come up, I would run them by our security committee, but it's done with the EMS in the township. And what it is, it's in concert with the state police, our local police department, our EMS, our fire department, and us, so that they could come into the school and they can help us with any type of security issues that we may have because of the laws between the schools under 18A and 6A as opposed to civil laws. So it's a memorandum of agreement that came out about 12 years ago. I worked it, I remember, with the state police in Salem, and it has stayed ever since, but it is all for security, homeland security.
And it's done on an annual basis?
Annual basis. Every summer, that's what I meet with them, and we go over that painstaking page by page.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Mrs. Suter?
On number 7, The last paragraph of the first page, it says that a physician's clearance needs to be sent to the district administration. Can I ask why it's not sent to the athletic trainers, since they're the ones who are going to have to put the 5-day gradual physical education back in to get
Sure.
them back on the team?
That's simple. It's because building principals are the instructional education leaders responsible for everything that goes on in their buildings. When I was at a concussion meeting that I had attended, they had said that make sure that those go to the building principal as well as to the trainer, for the fact that when and if there's any issues or legal issues that should come up, the first one that they get in touch with is the building principal. So they need to have on file everything that happens, but you are correct, it does have to go to the trainer, very important.
Right, but it says district administration.
Yes.
Is that the trainer? The
Yes.
trainer is...
That's correct, yes,
Okay.
excellent, thank you. But
Okay.
they needed to have both, but you're correct.
Okay, and on number 6, I do have a number of questions. On the first page, the third paragraph, it says, that the board provides access to district-approved web-based resources, networks, and computers for educational purposes. Can I ask, is there a list of web-based resources?
Scusinelli, it's board policy, board makes policy.
So is there a web-based resource list?
I thought that that was referring to our resources within the network, such as when we have our on-course teacher homepages and things like that. That was what I understood that to be.
Is that what it is, or is it a list of other internet websites?
Well, as of now, isn't that all that is approved? Because this policy is just going into effect for the first time, so as things are coming down the pike, they would have to individually be approved. That's my understanding of it, because there wouldn't be anything because the policy's new.
So if a teacher uses some website other than OnCourse or their teacher homepage, which I think they use SkyDrive or something, it cannot be used if this policy is approved tonight?
They have to have, if it's outside of the network, in other words, if it's not anything that's monitored by the district, if it's a third-party site, yes, they would have to have that approved.
Oh, okay. Also, it says, I'm just trying to find it. The board retains the right to have the superintendent of schools monitor network activity. I just want to know where you're going to find the time to do that.
Me?
Well,
That's
the
simple. I go to the tech department, and they do the research, and they place it on my desk.
Okay, so it's
I
not...
can request anything at all, because everything has to be archived by law. So I can get anything that I need, and at any given time, when we have issues or anything arises, it's just like the letter that I put on the website to the parent. I go to the tech, they do the research, and then they give it to me.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Letter D, and I think I'm on page 4. I mean, that's not the one I want. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find where exactly I want to be. I think it's either page 4 or page 5, letter D. It says, "All e-contact with students should be through the district computer network and telephone system." Is that Honeywell? Is that the Honeywell system? Is that referring to the Honeywell system?
I have to look, I was on page
Okay.
5, I have to go back to page 4.
It is, it's page 4, letter D.
Notifications related to classroom clubs or sports schedules, bench trips, assigns, and deadlines?
No, it says page 4 of 5, letter D, "All e-contacts with..."
Oh, up top. All e-contact
Page 4.
should be through the district's computer network and telephone system. Yep,
That's Honeywell.
yeah.
Now-
Could be Honeywell, but it also could be the computer network system, so if we're using Microsoft 360, which is our SharePoint now that we're going to be working with, that could be one of them also. As one of your board members brought out, partners put out, was that this is a new policy that's just going into effect, and also Microsoft 360, which is a SharePoint, is brand new, that's just coming up and being trained and taught. And as more and more things be developed through, that's going to be part of it, that it's going to be used through our system.
Okay, what is the relay time in the Honeywell system? Like, I know with the text, if you send out something to multiple people, it's pretty instantaneous.
Yes.
How fast does a Honeywell system work?
Honeywell sends it out instantly also. It depends on if, like, for example, the only time I've ever had a problem with that, in less than 10 seconds, sending out over 10,000 calls, the only time I had a problem with it during snow, when every school district that has Honeywell system is using it, we had one glitch in it. That was the only problem, but normally I could send out any email, because I do it prior to, if we're going to send out, principals set it up prior to, within less than 30 seconds, over 10,000 to the entire school goes out.
Okay, and are all the staff trained on how to use it?
I don't know about all the staff, we don't give it to every staff member.
Well, I guess like the extracurricular activity, the coaches,
That's
the
coming down the pipe with this
advisors.
that's coming down the pipe with this new policy.
So, okay, because further down, it says that the staff can contact a student's cell phone if they have an authorization form on file with you. Where do parents get that form? Is that something that's on the website? I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
it should be on the website. Again, you're talking about a brand-new policy that hasn't been approved yet, so nothing's going to be put in place until after the board approves this. Once the board approves this, then anything that's not on there will be put in place. So the questions you're asking would be after this is approved, maybe from a month from now, so tech can get everything put in.
So if we approve this tonight, then if a teacher needs to contact students on a sports team, they could still use their cell phone, even though this is approved?
Yeah, actually, when we put Honeywell in, I had asked that the tech people, which I don't know if they've gotten to, I know that we talked to each of the coaches, they're supposed to have it's called a separate quarry, where they have the names of their students, so that if they, give an example, if they're in a softball game and lightning strikes, and we have to shut down immediately, and, they're in West Paducah State somewhere, and I, as a parent, have my daughter there in the softball game, and I'm a nervous wreck whether they're out there in the lightning or not, right from his cell phone, they could send it out, a text message immediately, and goes out, and everyone knows that the game has been canceled, and the kids are on their way back. That's the nice part about it. And I want every single organization to have that and be trained on it. So once this policy's in place, we're going to start doing all the training for everything, set up all the quarries so that we get those informations out quickly. Then people don't have to be dialing on their cell phone and dial 15 or 18 players and dial individually, get them all one shot. Bang, goes out.
But that's what they do now. So I'm just
I'm
asking.
hoping they do.
Well, I know in my experience, that's what they do, and I'm just wondering, because I just don't want a staff member, if this is going to pass tonight, for a staff member to text somebody on a student on their personal cell phone, and then get in trouble for it.
They shouldn't be texting. That's what causes half the problems. That's why part of the reason for
here
the
it says-
policies.
Right, but, I mean, I don't see a problem with them texting a student if there's something related to their extracurricular activity, and I can approve it by signing that form. But then, on the next page, it says that if an extracurricular coach or advisor sends out a text, it has to be sent to everybody. And if everybody's parents don't have that authorization, they can't do that. So that's kind of contradictory.
Doc, is that something that you can put I'm sorry, through the chair?
No, go ahead.
I apologize.
Mrs. Cusinelli,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, Doc, is this something that upon approval, you can just put the authorization form as a PDF file under the For Parents section on the website, so that this way there's no downtime, and that would solve that?
Yes, that's a great idea. That's
But
great.
what if
I'm reading
everybody
it.
doesn't, what if everybody doesn't sign that? Like if a parent doesn't do that? And I'm saying if, say,
couldn't we
everybody
send-
on the football team, only, the 75% of the parents get this authorization and have it approved.
Well, couldn't we send out a Honeywell alert to the participants in the extracurriculars and sports right now to alert them, to direct them to go to that form on the website?
Could do that, we can give the forms out.
Right, but I'm saying, what if they don't approve it? Like, what if they don't fill it out and hand it back in? That's what I'm saying. And in the policy, it states it has to be sent to everybody.
Then that's the policy, then they would have to send it back.
Okay.
Board policy.
Okay. I skipped one on page 4. Letter B, the friending in Facebook. Is there a way that we can have a parent waiver to allow students to be friends with teachers if a parent so chooses?
Are you asking if,
I'm asking if we can put something in here for a parent to sign a waiver for their student to be able to friend teachers.
Through the chair, could I answer that, Sharon? Sure. Just, we've, you know, in putting this together, we've consulted with attorneys. We actually, myself, Mrs. Cantillo, we spoke with some people at school boards, at the workshop, and there's not been anyone who recommends that. There's not been any legal advice or any professional advice that warrants that, and I think that that was part of the nature of this law being put in place to begin with, that there were some issues resulting from that type of behavior. So in protecting the staff and the students, that's why pretty much across the board, every district has that.
I don't know about every district, but I just feel that, you know what, it's my job as a parent to monitor my child on the computer. And if I feel that it's okay, because there's many, many teachers, well, my daughter's not friends with many, many teachers, but the ones that she is friends with, they're very encouraging, and there are really some wonderful things they put on something like a Facebook site that I really, truly, as a parent, don't want to lose that. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Mrs. Suter, I can tell you that I agree with you. There are some wonderful teachers that have maintained very, very healthy and positive relationships with students on Facebook and in all aspects. What I will say, like I said in a precursor to this section, is that this is a work in progress. After attending several different sessions at the New Jersey School Boards Convention, I did bring home quite a lot of information on this policy and on the usage and what they recommend and what the attorneys, there were two separate attorney firms that actually gave sessions on this social media and the acceptance and what's been going on. And what I can say is this: one attorney's firm had suggested a one-way Facebook, which, let's say if we decided to have a Facebook page, we could put announcements out there, but no comments could be made underneath it, because we really don't want to be responsible at 2 o'clock in the morning that someone's going to make a comment on Facebook that could incite negative behavior in any way, with a teacher, with a student, with the district, in any way. What I have been told through different sessions that I attended was that the majority of teachers that have had any type of issues brought against them or have come up with a student and them having friends with a student on Facebook or their communications with cell phones, the percentage is that teachers have lost their careers. Now, I trust our teachers. I think the teachers, I know that my children, well, one of my children, I'm going to say, is a graduate of this district and has several teachers that they are friends with on Facebook. Very, very healthy, sometimes very positive, encouraging remarks are made to my child. that have made a big difference on some very bad days for them. And I wouldn't want that, but going by what we have been suggested and advised legally, that's not what we're advised to do. And it is not that we think negatively about our teachers. We don't. But what we're trying to do is protect our teachers and go by what we are advised legally. Now, like I said, this is a work in progress, and it's a mandated policy. So it's taken us a long time to get to this point, and I know that you were not in attendance, you couldn't be in attendance for the special meeting that we had just on this policy. But what is on there right now, what is drafted, has been a work in progress by everyone on this board for months. It has been a melding of school boards, of our policy writer, of different board members' input, and this is what we've come up with thus far. And like I said, with CUSAC being an ongoing process right now, we need to have a policy in place or we will fail CUSAC.
No, I understand
So,
that.
and I'm saying that you make very, very good points, and I have to tell you that I think that there are some teachers that have Facebook pages, and there are students that are friends with some teachers on Facebook, and the ones that I have seen and that I have been privy to are very, very positive. And I know some relationships that have been saved, and students that have been saved, truly, through the relationships with these teachers. So I am recognizing the positive that comes out of that. I definitely see that.
Yeah, but that positive's going to go away.
I understand
because of this
that.
policy, and what I don't understand is, I have to sign a waiver every year, and I get 3 choices. I could have my child's picture put on the website without the name. I can have my child's picture with all of her personal information. Or, you know what, don't use my child's picture, name, nothing. So there are legalities if I don't sign that and you put my child's picture on the website. So why can't we have the same type of waiver for something like that we do for pictures on the website, using pictures in a newspaper? We're going to have an authorization form that allows me as a parent to give my child's cell number to an advisor, a coach. Why can't we have the same thing for a site like Facebook? Because after Sandy, that was pretty much the only way people could communicate. And I'm not, hopefully, God forbid, that never happens again, but it's one of the ways that these kids communicate with their teachers.
Right.
So I have a real problem with that. It's my job to monitor it. And if I feel that a teacher says something inappropriate, well, you know what? Then they defriend them. So that's up to me. And I just feel like this policy takes a lot away, because I trust these teachers, and I'm sure you do too, and I'm sure everybody on this board does, but I feel like this policy is like strangling the staff, and I think it's more, let's give them the freedom and then rein them in. That's how I would rather see the policy, but like I said, that's my opinion, and I understand we have to approve something tonight, and you're right, I couldn't make those 2 meetings, but I just think there should be a waiver on something like that, because I think that's my decision as a parent.
And you know what, Mrs. Suter, I agree with you. My only concern is, and I'm not the most technologically savvy person, so maybe I shouldn't be the one addressing this. Everyone knows I have my challenges with technology.
You could turn around and off.
That's exactly what I can do, turn it on and off. My question is this, and when we were having our discussion, Dr. Caldez, you had made us aware of a situation when you were principal at Brick Memorial that really kind of hit home when I was thinking about this, because you know what, when I look at teachers, and I know that when they go home at night, they don't just take off their coat and sit down and watch TV and they stop being teachers. They are mentors, and they are very, very important people in students' lives. And that's a 24-hour-a-day job. It's not like being a clerk in a shoe store or working in a supermarket where you punch out and you're done, and that store goes on without you. And a teacher is a completely different person. They are a teacher 24 hours a day, and students do reach out to them, whether sometimes, most of the time, it's in a positive fashion, and good things come out of it. And I am going to stress that's my feeling. But Dr. Caldez did make some very good points in our meeting, our special meeting, and Dr. Caldez, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but maybe you can reiterate what you said that night. Mrs. Suter didn't have the privilege of being there to hear you.
I mean, unfortunately, we did encounter some situations where, Facebook was used inappropriately, and you can say it was an isolated incident, but it was actually more than one. And it did create some issues, and, it did cause some harm to some of our students because of the inappropriateness that was on there. And if we had a policy that would curtail it, and if we had this policy at the time, that would not have happened. But just, without getting into too many details of it, there was some, pretty bad stuff that went out there that, ended up, getting the district, we talk about the legal ramifications, and Mr. Sharadnik will tell you that because he was involved with it, it did involve the district legally, and it did put a responsibility on us, as such now these policies are, to make sure we're doing as much as possible to eliminate any possible situations that could arise that would create an inappropriate situation contact. We don't deny that, teachers are great mentors, for students. They do reach out to them. But I think what the policy, and I think what some of the things we're trying to do with the SharePoint that we have available is, we will have that availability for teachers and students to communicate. But I think as we do it through our programs that we house, we can monitor them, okay? We'll know what goes on. We will have, if we need to, we can go back and check to see actually what was communicated between the teacher and the student, if that ever happens. But as you know, over the years as a building principal, I've many, many times spent with parents discussing why this conversation happened between their child and the teacher, where sometimes they felt they didn't feel comfortable with it. Maybe because of, unfortunately, the student and the teacher viewed it one way, but the parent didn't do it another way. But we now only had the word of the parent, and what was there because they didn't know how to save it or whatever, So there was different scenarios. But we did have some bad situations that occurred that did harm some of our students. And I think if we had, fortunately, or unfortunately it happened, but fortunately it did happen where equipment through our school was used, and we were able to go back and trace it and progress without getting any further into detail.
Thank you,
Is
Dr. Caldez.
is there any inappropriateness that happens outside of the computer?
Nothing that has been brought to my attention right now, I will say that.
So in your whole career, there's been nothing inappropriate that has ever happened in any situation outside of, say, any of this social media? Ever?
I think you're getting into asking about situations, which I don't know if
I'm
we
just
really
asking
want to
in
get into.
general. You're
Yeah.
saying that, there's inappropriateness on these social websites. And you know what? I can take something that's written one way, you can take it another, Mr. Talty can take it another. It's your perception.
I'm in the middle.
What I'm saying is, as a parent of a child who is friends with teachers, that it is a very positive thing. I don't want to lose it. I should be able to give a waiver that does not hold the district with any liability, just like I do with other forms that I sign at the beginning of every school year. There's inappropriateness everywhere, depending on how you take it. So I don't see what the difference is here. I don't know what, I just totally don't agree with that. And
If I could just jump in, I mean, I understand it, and Ms. Suter, I think you're right. I mean, this isn't perfect, and it is a work that's been ongoing for a long time now. I think you have to get started, really for your own protection, because you need to have a policy in place.
No, I understand that, Mr. Sharadnik, and you know what, it's not like this is the first time that I'm bringing up this Facebook thing. I mean, I emailed everybody, I could not make that meeting, but why do we have to start it where I feel like it's strangling the staff? That's my opinion of this policy. I just feel like, why don't we give them the freedom to do, put in on this part a waiver. Give them the freedom to use websites that they need to teach their class. Give them that freedom and then rein them in. If Dr. Uzinski said he's going to monitor the network activity. He's going to monitor the emails. So somebody is going to be overseeing that. I'd rather the teachers have what they have now and then try to limit it if we see that there's a problem. If there's a problem that's going on in this district, and this is why it is so strict, I am not aware of that. So that's my opinion, and I don't know what to, it's just my opinion.
My suggestion is that I think it's important to adopt the policy tonight, but with the understanding, we have had discussions and we have worked out language with waivers and some of the other provisions, and we can certainly look at that moving forward. But I think you need to get something in place, and I don't think you can really, here on the dais, write appropriate waiver language to throw in the policy now.
Well, but I have brought it up before, so it's not like I'm just bringing it up like today, just so you know. I didn't send you the email, but I sent everybody else the email. So this isn't like I'm just bringing it up right now before the policy. I just,
I'm outside the system, so.
yeah.
But my recommendation to the board, I believe it's been talked about, it's worked on, and a lot of people spend a lot of time on it. Again, I think it's a good policy. You certainly can review it and look at the different sections, but I think it's important to get it in place tonight. And not only for CUSAC, but just your own responsibility, legal responsibility to have a policy in place, CUSAC or not.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Mrs. Suter, I agree with you. No one is accusing our teachers or wants anyone to have the impression that we don't trust our teachers to do the right thing. But on legal advice, this was the policy, it was sent to Mr. Saradnik, and after looking at all the different policies, we looked at other school districts, this is what we came up with. I agree, it needs some tweaking. I'm right there with you. I think it does need some tweaking. But in the absence of no policy, the district is open to a large liability, and so is our staff. So I'm only saying, like I said in the beginning, it's a work in progress. I think that your suggestions are valid, and so are the suggestions Mr. Conti made to me also, Mrs. Cusinelli, Mr. Panucci, everyone, basically, it's a work in progress, and we are going to continue working on it. And I think it's something that definitely requires another meeting. But as Mr. Saradnik said, in the absence of anything else, we need to put something in place.
Right, but I just feel like you're putting something at a totally far extreme. It's not even like it's in the middle. Like, to just have a general policy, or to have one that I feel like this policy is, where it really limits parents, students, and teachers. I think maybe we could have went with something that was maybe, in the middle somewhere. And I feel like if I vote for this policy and things, because I don't agree with those points that I've made, and things don't change, and then, I've already voted for this policy, and even though we might talk about it, I just don't know if I feel comfortable with this policy as it's written right now. So.
I can just tell you that when we had our special meeting, and every board member is going to vote however they feel about this, and I am not trying to sway anybody one way or another. I want to make that clear. But I want to say that anyone that was not in attendance at our, I guess it was October 9th or October 5th, our first week in
Workshop.
October, our workshop. We left that room in agreement after hours and hours of talking about this policy. Mr. Panucci made a statement that he felt that we really accomplished something as board members and compromised. He made a very, very nice statement, and I believe that we did, with the agreement that this is something going forward that we were going to look at. And I will tell you that I think that we need to have more than just the responsibility put on Mrs. Cusinelli, which I want to thank you for all of the work that you did on it, and Mr. Conti, the work that you did on it. You two were instrumental. I want to just say that right now, because a policy committee was not developed in the very beginning of this year, Mrs. Cusinelli was working with Dr. Uzinski, and they were trying to, because the policy manual has been neglected, and I'm going to be very, very blunt about that. It has been neglected for a very long time. It needed some immediate attention, and Mrs. Cusinelli volunteered to work with Dr. Uzinski before Mr. Conti and Mr. Panucci were elected. Going forward, Mr. Conti, I think that with all of the input that you've had, I think that you should, if you so accept, do so, should work with Mrs. Cusinelli on the policy committee so that it isn't just Mrs. Cusinelli having everything thrown in her lap and her having to answer questions on board policy, because it wasn't just her that came up with this policy. I don't want Mrs. Cusinelli to be sitting there having to take responsibility for everything. It was a collaborative
I
policy.
didn't think it was just Mrs. Cusinelli.
No, but Mrs. Cusinelli was put on the spot to answer questions on it, and it was something that we all worked on. And I just want to say that going forward, it is something that's going, and Mr. Conti and I did have a conversation about this, and it is something that is going to be looked at very, very soon, and another meeting is going to be made, and we can revise this policy as we see fit. But as our attorney is advising us, and I think it's kind of silly not to take the advice of your attorney, that we need to put something in place tonight. So, having said that, if any, Mr. Panucci, I can see
Yeah.
you're anxious to say something.
Just real quick, let's remember, this all came from the state because, 99% of the teachers in this state do the right job and they're professional.
Exactly.
This is because of the 1% that weren't professional, and we're mandated to do this from the state, so let's keep that in mind. These policies are all living documents. We can amend them whenever we want. And I'm comfortable for right now to start from the language that we changed from our last meeting to vote on this tonight. We did put caveats on there that if teachers want to do something creative with social media in their classrooms or sports teams, that there are avenues to get approval through their athletic directors and their principals up to the superintendent's office. So it doesn't explicitly prohibit anything, but it does give the superintendent the proper control to approve and not approve what he feels is appropriate. And to start with, I'm comfortable with that right now. And, we worked on that language with our coaches that need to text message and call their kids by getting a waiver. It's not perfect right now, and it's not going to be. I don't think any district has that perfect policy. But for right now, with, the work we did and the compromises we made, I can go with this tonight, knowing that it's a living document. And as far as the administration of it goes, as far as the forms and everything, I'm going to leave that up to our administrators to carry that out how they think is going to be the most efficient way.
Thank you, Mr. Panucci. Any other comment on items 1 through 7 by the board? Mr. Reed, I'm sorry.
Just on item number 1, I'm glad to see that we have estimated transportation costs on there for the ones that are going to cost the board money and are in the budget. We did come up with a wear and tear cost for the transportation, and now we can put that in there. So I think it's helpful for everybody. They know what they're approving.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Any other board member with a comment? Don't want to exclude anyone. Okay, anyone in the public that would like to make a comment on items 1 through 7? Seeing none, Mrs. Carey?
Mr. Cullty?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Suter?
I'm going to abstain on number 6, yes to everything else.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Cantillo?
Yes. Moving on to operations, Mr. Edwards?
Thank you, Ms. Cantillo. The superintendent recommends that the board approve items 1 through 26.
Do I have a motion and a second on items 1 through 26?
I'll make the motion.
I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Reed and Mr. Conti. Do I have any questions on these matters? Mrs. Cusinelli?
I apologize in advance to Mr. Edwards because I do have several questions that I know he's going to get stuck answering. On number 10, advanced education advisement, could you just explain to me, was that something that went out to bid, or was that just an appointment? And, well, that's the first question.
We did a request for proposal, received responses. Myself and Mrs. Russell reviewed the responses, and this is the firm that's being recommended to the superintendent for recommendation to yourself.
But you did receive multiple responses?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And is it standard that we're doing this as a 3-year contract?
Well, it's a 1-year contract, but the RFP covers 3 years, so it will be an annual appointment.
Okay, thank you. And also, is that the same case with number 11?
Sorry, I'm scrolling down to number 11. My computer's moving a little bit slow. Yes, however, in that case, we only received 1 response. This is the only respondent.
Okay. And also in number 12, extraordinary unspecifiable services, does that mean we did not put that out for a bid?
No, we did do an RFP on it. We did a request for proposal. And this school photography, because we're not paying them directly, it's a service that's being provided to the parents, is considered in the U.S. So it's extraordinary, unspecifiable, because we're not paying for it.
Was there more than 1 bidder on that?
There was not. There was only 1 response received.
Only 1 response received. Okay. And also in number 15, the Hunterdon County Educational Services Commission, I noticed that there really wasn't anybody in our area that's part of that, and I understand that there's no fee to be a part of it. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we use the Hunterdon County Educational Services Commission to primarily buy some technology stuff and, but mostly furniture. Hunterdon County ESC is the only ESC that we found that HON, H-O-N, is a brand name of furniture that we like to purchase for the schools because it's a good, durable product, and they have that on their co-op.
Okay, thank you. And last question, I'm probably covering it for anybody else who has questions with all these questions. In number 24, I think I understand what that's about, but I can see where it could add a lot of confusion to people, and I'd appreciate it if you could clarify for everybody exactly what that is.
Sure. Last month, the Board of Education approved moving to Horizon directly rather than being the State Health Benefit Plan effective January 1st. The approval that is made was also done during our open enrollment period, and during open enrollment, we had 1 staff member who selected the Direct Access 2035 plan within the State Health Benefit. So because we didn't have anybody previously on that plan when you approved the rates, this is now adding that plan to the plan for January 1st.
This is to accommodate the 1 person who chose that. This doesn't affect anything else or any other staff. This is just to be in compliance for that person.
Right, it actually opens it up for other people next October during open enrollment. If they wanted to select this plan, it will be available to them as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from board members?
Mrs. Cantel?
Yes, Mr. Tolpe.
Through the chair. Excuse me. Is there Mr. Edwards, could you explain to the public number 18 and 19? So that
Mr. Pulte, can you speak into the microphone? We can't hear you down here.
I was talking to him.
Well, I'd like to hear what you're saying.
I'm sorry. I asked him whether he could explain it to the public, what I just asked him, which was to explain to the public what number 18 and 19.
Okay.
What it means.
Okay.
I'll start with number 18. Number 18 is
Thank you.
a sole source resolution for bidding purposes. We, at Brick Memorial High School and here at Brick Township High School, are going to be going out for bids on replacement of HVAC equipment. We currently, right now in the district, primarily use Andover controls for the control of our HVAC equipment. And what the architect has pointed out to us is that if we go out to bid and were to specify Andover controls or equivalent, you could get a contractor to come in with a price, which would be your low bid, and put in Honeywell controls or Johnson controls or some other manufacturer, and then you would end up with multiple control systems in a building and also within the district. So the engineer's recommendation through the architect is that we sole source the specification to say that in our bids that we only want Andover controls, so that any contractor bidding on the project knows that when constructing the project, the only control system that we want is Andover, so that everything is consistent, there's no communication breakdowns between the various components of the system, and it provides a more efficient operation for us going forward. Any other questions on that one? I'll move on to number 19 unless anyone's got any questions on that. Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Todd, good? Number 19, for those of you, this is a sore subject with me, only because I've been living it for months because of what my wife does for a living. The SEC came out with a plan over the summer that they decided that schools, municipalities, government agencies in particular that issue bonds, within our bonds we have what's called continuing disclosure. And the continuing disclosure is that we annually will post our audit to the EMMA site, which is the exchange site for municipal markets. We'll post our budgets there, and we'll also put any type of statements of any type of activity that occurs that could have an impact on the rating of the bonds. And we're supposed to do that on an annual basis. We do post our audits, and we have posted our budgets. We have no problems with that. But what came to light, I guess, through the SEC is that the state of New Jersey had a downgrade in its Bond Reserve Act, and because our bonds are guaranteed by the Bond Reserve Act, that technically meant that we had a downgrade as well, schools across the state of New Jersey. And therefore, that should have been reported under the EMMA website. And then another issue that happened was all of the bond insurance companies were downgraded in the marketplace, and even though we weren't notified of that, and it was a nationwide occurrence, again, that was an issue that should have been disclosed on the EMMA website. So the SEC gave us the opportunity, or gave everyone the opportunity, to self-report. By December 1st, we have to self-report as to whether we had any of these compliance issues, and that we're going to admit that we didn't do what we were supposed to do. And if we self-report, they say that the fines that will be levied would be minimal, rather than the fines that they could levy if you don't self-report and you're found to be not in compliance. So I discussed this with the Finance Committee and said that through the Bond Council's recommendation, we don't know, or I shouldn't say, we do now, so I'll get to that in a second, but at the time that we discussed this with the Finance Committee, we did not know whether or not we have any of these issues that would be considered material where the SEC would levy fines against us. And so the Bond Council's recommendation was that the board pass a resolution giving the business administrator the authority to take any necessary action that would be necessary prior to December 1st to keep us out of trouble. And so that's what this resolution is saying. I'm happy to report to you, though, that just this week I found out from the Bond Council and from our financial advisor that after their thorough review of all of our filings, the Bond Council has determined that those two issues, dealing with the Bond Reserve Act of the State of New Jersey and the insurance company's downgrades for the bond insurance, are not considered material in his opinion, and therefore there is no self-reporting requirement that will be upon us by December 1st. So the passing of this resolution, I would still suggest that we do, just in case something changes between now and December 1st. But in all likelihood, this resolution will mean nothing because we will not be self-reporting. There is no material event that will require us to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards.
So this is just to protect us in case the state decides to change something else in the future, which probably won't affect us anyway.
It's really the Securities Exchange Commission. This is an
Okay.
SEC issue.
But nothing on our end.
Correct.
All right.
Any other questions, board members? No? Okay, do I have any questions from the public? Wow, seeing none. Mrs. Carey?
Mr. Talty?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes to all, with the exception of in number 5, PO number 1504648, please.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Suter?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
You have to abstain from the 1. I'll give you the number.
Yes, I'm going to abstain on number 5.
To abstain, I'll be reimbursed for going. I know, I'm just asking Mr. Saradnik.
All right, so you would, my recommendation, just to be on the safe side, I would abstain on number 5.
Okay. Yes to everything, abstain on number 5. Ms. Osborne, Human Resources.
Madam President, the superintendent recommends that the board approve the following items numbered 1 through 21.
Thank you. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Panucci.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Cusinelli. Do I have any questions regarding these items from board members? Seeing none, do I have any questions from the public?
Actually, can I just make a comment? I'm sorry. I just wanted to wish Ms. Krausman best of luck. I have to say, I'm not a science person, but every time she came to my curriculum and instruction committee meeting, I actually understood what she was talking about whenever she talked about any of her science classes. And I think because of her, I believe we are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Jasinski, but I believe we are one district that offers the most science elective classes in the county. And I have to give kudos to her because it was all her pushing for all of these science classes. So best of luck to you in the future. You will be missed.
Let's hear. Anyone else?
Yes, Ms. Candela. Again, through the chair to Ms. Edwards. On number 20, could you explain the merit goals for the cafeteria and what her percentage would be? I don't believe it's in her. Just so the public knows what she would get if she achieved her goals.
Ms. Richardson, within her contract that's been approved by the board, has the ability to earn 2.5% merit goals. In other words, each one's worth 2.5%. So the goals that we've presented to you tonight through the superintendent are the goals that she would have to meet by the end of this school year in order to be paid out that compensation.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Question? No? Do I have any questions from the public? Mr. Guton? I'm right there with you.
Okay. Mr. Salty?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Suter?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Cantillo?
Yes. Yeah. We are going to, well, let me just go through our calendar. November 21st, parent-teacher conferences with early dismissal for our elementary schools only. November 24th and 25th are parent-teacher conferences, all schools, early dismissal. November 26th is Thanksgiving recess. November 27th and 28th is Thanksgiving recess. December 18th is our next regular meeting here at Brick Township High School. At this time, do we want to...
We should open up.
I just want to know if we have any, can we hold board comments and just go with public comment? Because we are going to go into closed session again. I will open it up to the public if anyone has any questions.
Can I just say one thing? I just wanted to say what a great performance Mrs. Best and the cast and crew had done this weekend with the play While the Lights Were Out. It was her first performance, and it was really wonderful. Had a nice little twist to it. And I also wanted to thank Chick-fil-A for their donation of dinner. They provided the cast and the crew and the parents and all the volunteers with dinner on Saturday night, so you did an absolutely fabulous job. Thank you. I just wanted to get that.
Is there anyone with a comment that they would like to make from the public? Seeing none, I need, sorry, is there?
No, that's it.
Excuse me?
No, that's good.
Are we imagining one?
No, I was waiting for Mary to get up.
Oh, okay. I was going to say. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Panucci.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conti.
Be with you in 1 second. Sorry, I've got to get to the resolution. My computer's at a snail pace today.
And just so you're aware, there won't be any further action taken after the closed session, so there'll be no, the motion, the board will just reconvene to adjourn, no formal action taken on any matters.
I can start by saying whereas.
Whereas.
All right, I'm here. All right.
Good seeing you.
Whereas the Brick Township Board of Education has been formed pursuant to the applicable New Jersey statutes, and whereas the board is charged with the responsibility of performing all acts and performing all things consistent with law and the rules of the State Board of Education necessary for the lawful and proper conduct and equipment and maintenance of the public schools and public school property of the Brick Township School District, and whereas Section 7 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting of the board in certain circumstances, and whereas the board has determined that circumstances exist for such an executive session, and whereas the board has found the action described below to be necessary and proper, now therefore be resolved by the board on November 20th, 2014, the public shall be excluded from the discussion of and the action on the executive session herein set forth. The session will be approximately 30 minutes, and the general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is negotiations. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter will be made public if and when it is deemed to be in the public interest to do so, and the need for confidentiality is no longer required by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Mr. Talty?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Cusinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Panucci?
Yes.
Ms. Suter?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Cantillo?
Yes.